It's weird because, we get together and we do 40-50 and we think about topics that we're going to talk about. But then this one came up and we were like, we got to get together on this one because Black man in his 50s, this is what we're about to talk about those prolific figures, that we can look up to as Black men,
Mm,
that can be vulnerable and honest and transparent and authentic all at the same time,
yeah,
that we
yeah,
had to pull the plug and be like, we got to jump on here and say something about this
yeah.
cat. So, this
Absolutely.
is really, really a memory to honor Malcolm-Jamal Warner. And
Welcome, one and all, to another edition of the 4050 Social Club. We're a virtual forum that focuses on Black men and on helpful and healthy ways for us to transition successfully from our 40s into our 50s and beyond. We aim to do this by presenting about a wide variety of topics, from health, wealth, and spirituality, to relationships, to our professional lives and continuing aspirations, to quite simply and honestly just being a great human. As I've shared on several occasions, I wish there had been platforms like 4050 around when I was approaching and beginning to evolve into and through this particular life period. So we hope that you'll engage with us on this podcast as we add to the growing movement to support and to honor Black men. Jamian, our eagle-eyed visionary, Quest, our resident helper, and myself, CJ the Seeker, are excited to be here with you today for another injection of the 4050 Social Club. Let's get it. We grew up watching him grow up. He was the brother we wish we had, the version of ourselves we didn't know was possible. Today, we remember Malcolm-Jamal Warner and what he meant to a generation of Black men learning how to dream.
mm, mm,
Mm,
can't help but think about this loss, man.
yeah,
We learned on, what was that, Monday.
yeah.
But I guess before we start talking about this superhuman Malcolm Jamal Warner, I
Mm,
can't help but take a moment to look back over the course of the things that he did
mm,
in his lifetime that a
mm.
lot of us may not even have known.
First thing that comes to mind to me is this is one of those moments that lives like some other things have for me. I know where I was when certain things happened. I remember where I was when 9/11 happened. I remember where I was when certain things occurred. And this is one of those that hits not in the same way that 9/11 does when I think about losing Chadwick Boseman, within the last couple of years. Like these losses that we've had that have been really tragic, especially for the Black community. I think
Yeah.
about that, like where was I and what happened in that moment? So we were literally on our way home from Vegas. We'd gone there to watch NBA Summer League games. My younger daughter Avery's an even bigger NBA fan than I am, and so it was a bucket list item. We wanted to do it. We did it. Celebratory moment. We were, on our way back, and my wife is in the car with us, and she says, "Wow," she just sort of says to me like, "Oh my gosh." Malcolm-Jamal Warner passed away. I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? It just didn't even feel real. She's like, yeah, it looks like he drowned. And you just have this moment of intense
Wow.
sorrow. As soon as you have that moment of sorrow, you're like, is that fake news? I don't know for sure
Right,
that this
right,
is
right, right,
real. So
right.
I had another moment, interestingly, because I was like, well, where'd you get that? How'd you find this out? She's like, oh, she just got it from TMZ. So I had that moment of reflecting on what TMZ used to be and what it was synonymous
Yeah,
with. It was all
yeah.
paparazzi
Yeah,
glitz, like all the stuff,
paparazzi.
the salacious stuff they were doing. Now it's
Yeah,
gotten to the point where the moment she said she got from TMZ, I was like, damn, that probably really happened then.
yeah,
And then, of
yeah.
course, like your mind goes into a lot of different places that we're going to talk about for sure. But for you, like, where were you? What was the moment like for you?
Yeah, man. I was at work and I remember some of our boys had shared something in a group chat. And like you said, I got it and I was like, man, whatever. The first thing you think of is, I don't really know. I think about all the fake news that's out there, and I couldn't help but go to some of my sources because I'm like, hey, could this be true? And unfortunately, just like you say, TMZ, Instagram has become a source of truth for a lot of folks. It's,
Wow.
it's almost like the second or third place we go to when we try to figure out, is this real or not?
Mhm.
And then I just started seeing all these different posts and all these different things popping up, and I couldn't help but start to dig deeper. So of course I start digging into, some of the mainstream news channels, and it's like, sure enough, brother had passed. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it just was like this stillness, like a numbness, like you said, like man, this brother's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of was my Gordon Gartrell moment,
Mm, mm.
and that memory I had.
Wow.
It just made me think of all the time growing up watching this cat, man, and
Yeah.
watching him on TV, growing up on the Cosby Show. He was such a fixture in our household,
Hmm.
and I couldn't help but get sad. It's just like, man,
Yeah. Yeah.
another one gone.
Yeah. It's rough. It's really rough, man. And you just get into the Cosby Show. I think, especially for our podcast and this community that we're trying to build, these are black men in their 40s and 50s. You can't
Yep.
be a black man in your 40s and 50s and not have been
Yeah.
affected by this man in some way, you know? And so for me, what is
Oh
he like, a
man.
year? He's a year and a half, maybe older than I am.
Yeah.
And I remember growing up where I grew up to see a positive image of a black teenage boy on screen was amazing to see, because I feel like that
Yeah.
wasn't the kind of thing we saw a lot of.
Yeah.
Even more powerful than that, because he was a positive character, right? Like he was
Yeah.
flawed for sure, but in the
Yeah.
ways that any adolescent is, black, white, doesn't matter what they are. He was flawed in those ways, but in a way that was also very endearing. Like nobody watched the Cosby Show and thought ill of Huxtable. You know, like
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
had these
Yeah.
things. And so what's also really powerful and not lost on me when it comes to the show, but also to him and the impact that he had on all of our lives as black men of this age group. And my wife, Janine, she brings this up all the time. And I agree with her. It's fascinating to think about. There was a time where we all were consuming pretty much the same thing. And when it comes to
Sure.
TV, there were three channels. You had CBS,
Yeah.
NBC, and ABC. With me living in
ABC.
Chicago, we
Yeah.
had, WGN
Yeah.
was Channel 9 for us. On the UHF, we had the what became the Fox affiliate back
Yeah.
then, like WFLD in Chicago. So we had a handful of channels, and to be in a city, we had a few more than others. So Janine, growing up in Columbus, she only had CBS, NBC, and ABC. So what she talks
Yeah.
about is kind of lamenting that there's so many options now that we're not all plugged into the same thing, and there's something you
Yeah.
lose in that. So when you think about it, a show like that cannot become as legendary and iconic as it is still
Yeah.
without drawing other than a black audience. Like we were all tuning in for sure. Every black person I knew was like, "Yeah, I'm tuning in to the Cosby Show." We were breaking
Yeah.
whatever we had to make sure we
Must see TV.
we
Yeah.
had to we had to get there, but it wasn't just us. There's
Mhm.
no way that that show becomes what it became if it's just
Yeah.
on our backs. Like everybody was consuming this and having these
Yeah.
same really positive impressions of what a black family could be, right? So
Yeah.
that's where my mind goes. And then again, to his character specifically, giving me something to envision that I didn't see around myself a lot. Like when you think about when you grow up in a place where what's around you doesn't show that kind of middle to upper class black success, like you don't see that socioeconomically, to get yourself out of it, like you've got to be able to be a strong creator. Like you have to be able to have vision in a big way. What
Sure.
that show did was supplied something for us to fixate on, like, wow, look at what he's able to do. It could have been a black family on there and say they had only daughters, they didn't have a son, or they had a son who wasn't in my age group.
Yeah.
It would have been harder for me to see myself in a family like that. But I saw
Yeah.
that, like I saw that, and I was able to see it through him and through them. And there's no doubt in my mind that that had an impact on creating a vision that I could then make happen for myself that was other than the station that I was born into in that same kind of way. So that's not lost on me
Yeah.
at all. And then I would also say, with my dad having passed away when I was so young, not
Yeah.
having that relationship with a dad, but seeing this guy who was my age having a relationship with his dad on screen. Yes, it wasn't real,
Yeah.
but I didn't know it wasn't real. To me, it was like, wow,
That's
this
right.
is
That's
what
right.
a relationship between a black father and son can look like. And so I
Yeah.
cherished my relationship to him because he was opening up an experience that I wasn't having other than that.
No,
What about for
absolutely.
you? What about for you?
Man, I mean, you hit so many things. I think about the one thing that you mentioned. I remember I was at Emory and we were doing grad school stuff, and I had a whole different class, every white, black, green, yellow, all in that class. And we all talked about the Cosby Show one day, and everybody in my class talked about how they watched the Cosby Show and how they were raised by the Cosby Show,
It's real.
and
Yeah.
it was just
Yeah.
so interesting that it wasn't just a black show, it was everybody's show, and it was providing a model for families to raise their children, to have healthy relationships, to have fun, to respect each other, and also receive each other's flaws in
Mm.
ways that you know you just didn't see.
Yeah.
Typically, if it was a black family on TV, it was strictly comedy, or
Yeah.
it didn't really hit some of those hard parts, and how we were able to grow with him through his adolescence, and see him mature into this wonderful human.
Yeah.
And I feel like, as I think back about the show, it seemed like his life was really true to form, like it
Mm.
was in that show. Like
Interesting.
the
What do you
the
mean by that?
Theo that I feel like the Theo that like the show, like his life just continued past the show.
Ah, interesting.
Like
Interesting.
we
Yeah.
saw the evolution of him. We grew up with him. We
Mhm.
went to middle school, elementary school. We went to
Right.
the high school with him.
Yeah.
But then, like, once that show clicked off, he still kept maturing as though he was still a part of the show. Like it,
Gosh.
like,
Wow.
like to
Wow.
me, I didn't see like his character really change. Like as he evolved, I was like, that makes sense.
Huh.
Like it wasn't like he was just this completely different human.
Yeah.
Um, it's like we still saw him evolve. Everybody thought he was cool, like he was
Yeah.
humble, he was flawed, but he
Yeah.
was still evolving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as I learned the different sides of him outside of him being on film and on camera and all that limelight, like he had an amazing life.
Mm.
You
Mm.
know,
Mm.
I look back on it and I'm like, dang, I hate to see the brother leave, but at the same time, man, he was a dreamer.
Yeah. Oh,
And
yeah. Big
he
time.
accomplished so many of those dreams
Mm.
that, as a black man, I cannot but respect and honor. And
Yeah.
he had no fear. The
Yeah.
things that he did were like completely creative. He was an artist, and he
Artist.
had so many
Truest
different
sense of the word.
sides to him: a poet, a
Yeah.
musician, a producer,
Yeah.
a father, like, all these things. Like, bro,
Yeah.
uh, if we're able to capture a piece of his lifetime and live a fearless life, he is a role model in that way.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
I can't help but respect him on so many levels. Hate to see that he's gone, man. I'm like,
Yeah.
dang, he still has so much left in him,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think you're hitting at something that is really interesting too, and that's his evolution over the years. One of the
Yeah,
things that I think I've come to appreciate over the last several decades too is how when you think back to what Theo was as a character, he had been on TV a little bit before then, but that was really the one that kind of defined for the culture who he was to us.
yeah,
And again, he was this like adolescent kid going through all the things he goes through. Some flightiness to it, just all these sort of things. I don't think I understood until much later just how brilliant of an actor he was. Cause
yeah,
it's
yeah,
as you got to see his depth, and he has some depth as Theo too, but that was stuff that kind of emerged a little bit later. Like there was comedic stuff, and then it started to get to the other. But when you see who he became as an actor and the roles that he played after that, it really made you understand, like, wow, the depth he must have had to be able to tap
yeah,
into this thing that was so adolescent, where you felt like
yeah,
that's who he is. He was way more than that, but there wasn't proof of that until you saw his range when he was able to do other stuff. And there are other
yeah,
folks too. Like I know from a personal side, everybody I know who's had
yeah.
any interaction with him at all talks
I
about
know
him as
what you're about
being
to
one of the
say.
most fabulous people that they've ever met.
Yeah,
Uh, and,
yeah,
tha- and that's
yeah.
something to me
I
that
know
is
you were about to
absolutely
say
something to
that.
aspire to. Yeah. And
I knew
and
you were
and
gonna
like
say
thinking
that.
about that, child actors, what do we see from them? Like a lot, and not with all of them, but for a lot of them,
Yeah,
especially when they reach those kinds of heights that he reached in that role, the struggle for them once they have to leave that limelight, even if they're able to continue their
mhm,
careers, they're usually not able to shine quite as brightly. He didn't seem
yeah,
to care about that. He didn't seem to
yeah,
care about that at all. And the way that he evolved into this full version of an artist in all these ways, like you name the discipline, he was really good at being able to do it. And taught himself how to do things that he didn't know how to do because he knew that he's an
yeah,
artist. He would be great at that. What I think about,
yeah,
we moved out here to LA in 2012, and we live in a neighborhood where there's like this 2 mile loop, And at the top end of the loop, he had a house up there. And, I didn't know this at the
Mm.
time, but you saw somebody walking a dog one day, like, wow, that looks like Malcolm-Jamal Warner, like going right by my window. Come to find out that he actually lived there. But then
Get
had my
out.
own personal experience with him at our school. He was a featured guest for us during Black History Month. He was going to come and do a poetry reading, and he was there. And again, I knew him as Theo. I knew him as, Malcolm from Malcolm and Eddie. That, when that was going on, he had the show with Tracy Ellis Ross. Like, he had some things that you got to see him in. But I saw him more actor than I did anything else. And I knew about some music out there, but I just didn't know that much about that piece of him. So he was
Yeah.
doing this poetry reading, and it didn't fit for me with what I thought someone who would be spoken word poetry would do. He was absolutely incredible at it from the
Yeah.
beginning
Yeah.
of it to the end. Gave us a handful of his own poems. He gave us a handful of some ones that were more well known that we could all identify with, but he just delivered them with a smoothness and an authenticity to it, like there's
Yeah. His
soul in
voice
it.
was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And it was everything. It was just his energy. His energy really brought you in. And
Yeah.
living out here, I try my best to kind of stay away from the stars. Like, hey, let them live their life. I'm not going to be all up in their face, ask for autographs, doing whatever. It's cool with me. It just is what it is. But my connection to him, he didn't know me at all. My connection to him, though, I saw him there at this event, had my then 12 and 7-year-old daughters with me. I was like, I got to introduce them to this man because he was such an
Yeah.
influence on me when I was their age, and introduce them not knowing how I would be received by him. And it was nothing but welcoming and love. And he was like, yeah, let's take this photo. We took a picture, and you can even see his countenance in the picture. Like, there was nothing, there was no affect to it. Like, he was in that
Yeah.
moment with us in a way that I
Yeah.
could really appreciate. So to be someone of his stature who was willing, saw this dad with a couple of Black daughters and was like, I'm giving time to them to make sure I know that they're special and they need to feel that.
Yeah.
That was a cool moment for me, you know?
Yeah, man. I like you said, there's so many personal stories I've heard from different people of all walks of life, and they all have the same response.
Mm,
He was cool, he was humble, he was funny, he was, just a human.
yeah.
And I share, I have a story too. My uncle's a professional bass player out in LA. And I remember years ago, he had told me, and over the years, he'll tell me, like, he's like, yeah, man, uh, I teach, bass to different players, different people in LA. And you'd never imagine the people I've had in my basement. He's had Keanu Reeves, he's had,
Mm,
and then he tells me one day he had Malcolm-Jamal Warner. I'm like, what? He's
wow.
like, yeah, man, like, we spent endless hours me teaching him the bass, and he would tell me like this cat would just go all out. Like he would get involved in something, and he was like, I want to learn it, and I want to be good at it.
Mm, mm,
I don't want to just
mm,
play around with this thing. And I
mm,
remember him telling me, all the memories that he had with just him and Malcolm in the basement, just chilling, kicking it,
mm.
and
Wow.
him learning how to play the bass and share laughs and smiles and share different stories of him growing up. But I'll never forget, he always was telling me how humble he was.
Wow.
And
Wow.
you would never think that he was, somebody that had been, a famous, superstar growing up since he was a young tyke. And he could have ended up on any side of it. He could have been
Yeah.
strung out on drugs. He could have been homeless. He could have, all the horror stories we hear.
Mm,
But he was able to protect his humanity in ways that allowed him to still extend creativity and be a
yeah.
full-blown artist. And so I
Yeah.
think for that, man, it's weird because, we get together and we do 40-50 and we think about topics that we're going to talk about. But then this one came up and we were like, we got to get together on this one because Black man in his 50s, this is what we're about to talk about those prolific figures, that we can look up to as Black men,
Mm,
that can be vulnerable and honest and transparent and authentic all at the same time,
yeah.
that we
Yeah.
had to pull the plug and be like, we got to jump on here and say something about this
Yeah.
cat. So, this
Absolutely.
is really a memory to honor Malcolm-Jamal Warner. And, one thing my uncle had always told me, like, as we were started doing 40-50 early in his infancy, although it's still very much an infant, he was like, man, he shared some of our first episodes before we really started putting things on YouTube and Instagram. And I'll
Wow.
never forget, he was like, man, Malcolm was like, yo, I'm gonna start sharing this with my cats. And he
Wow.
just kept
Oh
saying,
man.
like, make sure you tell your young bro to keep going. Like, I can't wait one day to be on there. So it's like,
Wow.
dang, we missed that opportunity. So like this is our opportunity to have Malcolm on the show, even
Wow.
though he's gone, you know?
Gosh, yeah. Wow, man, that's powerful. That's really powerful.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And where you just took me to was thinking about the ways that he broke barriers. Because
Yeah.
what you're talking about, 40-50, what we stand for, that kind of authenticity, being who you really are, like allowing yourself the freedom to express and all of that. He was such an exemplar of that. So that in and of itself was breaking a barrier. But when I think about two that come to mind, one was still when he was on the show. And you think about Theo, what do we know about Theo? Theo was smart. Theo was
Yeah.
precocious, but Theo kind of couldn't get it out of his own way when it came to his grades for whatever reason. And I don't remember
Yeah.
all the episodes, but I remember it would come up a lot. Like he wasn't the straight
Hmm.
A student. He wasn't the same
Right.
student that his sisters were. And I remember
Right.
him
Right.
kind of
Right.
internalizing that that was something wrong with him. Like I think if I remember this correctly, in one of the episodes, he even referred to himself as stupid. It's like, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 you're not stupid. They wound up doing this ed testing for him, educational testing, and found out he was dyslexic. That was a
Yeah.
word I maybe had heard it here and there. Maybe I hadn't. I don't know. But I definitely didn't understand what it meant. But in our community, in the Black community, we didn't talk about learning differences in those ways, whether it was because we didn't
Yeah.
believe they existed or we didn't have the money to pursue them to see if there was something there. Who knows? But whatever it was, that just wasn't a part of the conversation that we were having. So he brought
Yeah.
language to us about a really important topic in a way that I don't know that it had ever been done that way before. So like in that way, he was definitely a barrier breaker. Even if that wasn't his idea to do it, he was the figure through which that movement kind of occurred, I think, in the Black community, or part of it at
Yeah.
least. But then I also
Yeah.
think about the last several years of his life, like what he was doing publicly, so much of it was about mental health for Black men in particular, but the Black community for other folks too. That was the Not All Hood podcast that he had. Just I watched that as
Yeah.
we are gathering things that we want to do. It's one of those things I plugged into at points like, wow, there's some ideas here that I think are really fruitful for me, which means that they would
Mm.
probably be fruitful for others. So like that
Right.
that aspect of his impact is something that's not lost on me either.
Yeah. 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 I love the fact that he was silent. He was
Mm,
quiet. You didn't hear a lot about him, but he was still pursuing all of his dreams, goals, and aspirations. Like he was a dreamer,
yeah.
and man, he was killing it, and all the things that he did. And I couldn't help but imagine, like, you know, what was going through his mind, maybe as he was swimming. I couldn't help but
Mm,
it was this moment I had, me and my girl early in our relationship. We went to St. Lucia, and I couldn't help but think about how he passed swimming because I'm a swimmer. I love to swim too.
yeah.
That's my refuge. And I decided one day, we were out there and we had been drinking and I was drinking and I was like, I'm gonna go swim. I'm gonna go swim in the ocean. And they had the sign of the flag up, the black flag, letting you know that it was turbulent waters. And I'm still thinking I can
Mm.
go in there and do my thing. And I jumped in there, man, and
And you said
caught
you've
a
been
current.
drinking.
I had been drinking.
Okay.
Yes, I had been drinking. And basically, man, caught a current, man, and that thing flipped me sideways, man. And I walked out of that water all contorted. And I remember thinking, like, man, I could have died that day.
Wow.
I
Wow.
could have, I could have, that
Wow.
water turned me, flipped me inside out, man. And I hit the bottom and I felt a bone, like just bones cracking, like
Ooh.
somebody was cracking my back. And I walked out of there all contorted and I'm like, that could have been my neck, you know?
Wow. Wow. Wow.
And so you just never know when it's your time to go, man. And it just
Ooh.
made me, reflect on that experience. Thank God,
Wow.
we put the drink down, but I'm like, we are vulnerable. We are not invincible,
Wow.
and it just made
Wow.
me think about what he may have experienced at that time,
Oh,
of his passing.
that's scary. Yeah. That's scary. I mean,
Yeah.
it's tomorrow's never promised, It just
Tomorrow's
isn't.
never promised.
Oh, and that's a lesson to take from
Tomorrow's
this
never
too. I
promised.
because I would
Yeah.
say I'm glad that you brought that up too, because that is one of the places my mind went as well. Like as hard as this moment is for me, for Black men, for Black community, for our communities beyond the Black community, even, there is inspiration I take from this. And one of those
Yeah,
is tomorrow is not promised, so
that's right.
get out of your way. Just get out of your way. If
Just
you
get
just
out
get
of your
out of
way.
your way and allow who you really are to shine, that's all
Yeah,
we're really here to do. And I feel like that's
yeah,
something that he was doing. Um,
absolutely.
so really feeling that like it's something I aspire to,
Yeah.
and it's something I am growing towards, but to be there is a different thing, and we don't have time to waste, you know.
And man, you hit the nail on the head, man. And I think, if it's anything that I learned from this experience as we transition from our 40s into our 50s, we start experiencing death
Mm.
personally, locally,
Mm.
and also globally.
Mm.
And it makes you just start to get present to where you are in your life. What
Mm.
are some of the things that are holding you back? What are some of the things that are surrounding you with fear and doubt and worry
Mm.
that cause you to not do some of those things that you want to just do?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't help but think about those things, and I'm up here like, man, I gotta keep going. I
Mm.
saw Instagram earlier and it talked about this cat was 53 and it just talked about, once you reach a certain point in your life, man, it seems like the clock starts ticking faster,
Wow.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
probably are, if we're lucky and fortunate as Black men, to have another 20, 25 years to reach whatever pedestal we
Mm.
want to reach, but it's moments like this that make me really want to go even harder on
Mm.
40, 50. That makes me even want to go harder on those dreams and goals I
Yeah.
have relationally and professionally and
Yeah.
entrepreneurially, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
man, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Yeah. That's real,
yeah,
man. It's a call to action, you know?
yeah,
It is a call to
yeah,
action. Yeah. In a
yeah,
way. Wow.
for
Wow.
sure.
Well, there's one other thing that came to mind for me that I want to bring up too, before we
Okay.
wrap up on this. And it is, and I'd be interested to see if you felt this way too. In the wake of this tragedy,
Yeah,
one of the things it has done has brought the Cosby Show back into the public parlance and in a different kind of way. Like all the scandalous stuff that was going on with Bill over the last few years, it's almost as if you felt weird. It's like it's complicated. You felt weird about talking about like liking the show or anything like this. And now with this happen, the sort of appreciation that people are showing for him, his role on the show, and even the way that he dealt with that scandal when it was going on. Like there
yeah,
was nuance to Malcolm-Jamal Warner in a way that I think a lot of times people don't get, where they expect you to
yeah,
be either this or that. Either you love Cosby or you don't. Either you love the show or you
yeah.
don't love it. It's like, hey, more than one thing can be true at the same time, right? And he's like, look, that man, I respected that man. He did a lot for me. He obviously did some awful things, and he's being punished for those he should. But that doesn't take away from what the show was. And he didn't say it
That's
in
right.
those words, but however he said it, he was able to express that in a way that I think people are able to get. And I
Yeah.
feel like his passing is bringing that show and the greatest pieces, the purest pieces of that show is bringing that back into the public discussion in a way that nobody has to be embarrassed about anymore.
Yeah, and I think it sheds light on, even though it was called the Cosby Show and Bill was, of course, the main character, but now it sheds light on, well, he wasn't the only character,
Yeah. Yep.
and I think that because it was such a dynamic show, it was such an amazing show,
Mm.
but we were able to now grow with different characters
Mm.
according to our timeline.
Right. Right.
And, you know, how can we not be so connected to Theo, to connected
Mhm.
to Malcolm Jamal Warner at 50?
Yeah.
And it's like I never really thought about it until his passing. It's like
Mm.
I always admired him, I always revered him,
Mm.
but now it's like, wow,
Mm.
I look up to him even more,
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
fact that he stuck to his morals. He never really talked down against Bill or the show or anything like that. It was like it was a part of him, and he kept going.
Yeah.
And I think that says volumes about who he was as a human.
Yeah,
you
I
know?
agree. I agree. And I guess the other thing as you were talking to make me think about was in hearing the things I've heard, the few the little interaction that I had, like that whole thing, he didn't seem to be one who ever thought he was perfect. You know, he
Yeah,
understood that he was flawed. He understood he was
yeah.
flawed and he was authentically himself. And I think people who have talked about him though said, yes, he wasn't perfect, but he was perfectly himself. You know, and
Yeah.
and again, there's something to that. There's something inspiring in
Mm,
that. Like, how do we draw from
mm,
that what it is that we can potentially be as well? So, to me,
yeah.
when I think about what 4050 Social Club is about, where we're going, there are topics
So,
we haven't dived into some of these topics to the degree that I know that we want to,
yeah,
as the audience is growing here. But this is one of those things that makes me want to jump into that and to share my gift, and for you to share your gift, and
yeah,
for Quest to share his gift, and for
yeah.
everyone who is a part of this community, whoever you are, get
Oh,
out there and share your gift. That's all you have to do.
yeah,
If you share your gift with the world, fulfillment is there, you know?
yeah.
And
I
it's
love
getting
it.
out of your own way that allows that to happen.
I love it, man. I love it. If there's one thing that you said so eloquently is, I may not be perfect, but I'm perfectly human,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I think that's all we can wish for.
Hmm.
Guy said something the other day. I was like, I'm doing my best to be my best,
There you go.
you know, and flawed in all the ways, but I'm still aiming to be and reach my best, you know? And
Hmm.
at the end of the day, man, I pray that we just are able to leave an impact where people can be like, yeah, that brother was flawed, but he was a dope dude,
There you go.
you
There
know?
you go.
And I wish that for everybody watching this episode and future episodes moving forward.
Amen to
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all. We want to give our shout outs to MJW and his family and all his friends, and you may have left us, but you're always here. And we're gonna keep the torch lit for you, bro. And
Amen.
so thank you for everything you've done for us, Theo, and thank you for all that you're continuing to do, Malcolm. Love you, man. We'll holler at you. Y'all be good. Peace.
Well, there you have it. Another epic episode of 4050 Social Club, and we hope that you enjoyed it as much as we did. Subscribe on YouTube, click that button below. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all social media platforms. We are here to help Black men transition through the most impressionable years of your life, your 40s and 50s. Don't feel as though you're out here alone. We're here with you to share our stories and our journey. So let's get to it, y'all. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And until then, be well, friends. Peace.